Helle Crafts was a Danish-American flight attendant who was killed and dismembered by her husband, Richard Crafts, in November of 1986. Helle had suspected that Richard was having extramarital affairs with other women and wanted to file for a divorce. Richard Crafts then brutally beat Helle before disposing of her body into a wood chipper. Police were able to connect Richard to the crime by finding various articles of evidence such as hair fibers, blood, and even a letter that contained Helle's DNA. It was the first time in Connecticut's history that an arrest and conviction was made without the use of a physical body. This is the story of Helle Crafts. Helle Crafts was born Helle Lorik Nielsen in the town of Charlottenlund, Denmark on July 7, 1947. She would later immigrate to the United States. As a fan of traveling, Helle decided to become a flight attendant for the American airline Pan Am. During her travels, she would eventually meet her future husband, Richard Crafts. Richard was also employed by the aviation industry as a pilot for Eastern Airlines. Richard also was a part-time policeman. Both Helle and Richard soon became engaged, and they then became married, and they will later have several children. The Crafts would later settle in a small Connecticut town known as Newtown. Despite Helle's smiling and outgoing demeanor, it was a very different story at home. Richard was known to be cold and stern. While away at work, Helle began to hear word of Richard having affairs with other women. To that end, Helle hired a private investigator to look in on Richard and gather evidence. Upon her return trip from East Germany, Helle returned back to the United States and was dropped off at her home in Connecticut. It was the last time her friends would see her alive. When Helle didn't show up for work, her coworkers began to worry. The authorities contacted Richard, but he came up with multiple reasons why Helle was missing. He first had said that Helle was in Denmark to visit her mother, or that she was in the Canary Islands. Helle's friends, however, were skeptical, noting the many times that she had mentioned Richard's bad temper and his abusive behavior. Helle even stated that if something were to happen to her, it wouldn't be by accident. Moreover, a maid who cleaned the Crafts' household noticed mysterious stains in Helle and Richard's bedroom, on the floors, the bed sheets, and even the ceiling. Investigators tested the blood, and it belonged to a human being. Investigators also obtained Richard's financial information and found out that he had purchased and rented both a chainsaw, new bed sheets, and a wood chipper. As the murder of Helle Crafts garnered attention in Connecticut, a snowplow operator recalled an encounter in which, on the night of November 18th, he encountered a man who looked like Richard using a wood chipper near an area of Newtown called Lake Zor. The snowplow driver led police to the area where they found teeth, fingernails, human flesh, and over 2,000 strands of hair. In order to prove a case for death, investigators need an actual physical body to make a complete determination. However, in this case, there wasn't one, but authorities were able to test the blood in the bedroom and the human remains at Lake Zor and successfully linked them to Helle. Richard Crafts was then indicted and convicted of the murder of Helle Crafts, in which he later confessed to the murder. According to Richard, both he and Helle got into an argument that soon turned violent. At some point, Richard then took a large metal police flashlight and hit Helle in the head several times. The force of the impacts ejected Helle's blood onto the walls and ceiling. Helle's head then brushed against the bed sheets and it left blood there. Richard then placed the body in a freezer for several hours until it was frozen solid. He then dismembered Helle and attempted to dispose of the body in a wood chipper, hoping to scatter the remains across the lake. Richard then disassembled the chainsaw and attempted to file off its serial number, but authorities were able to reconstruct both the serial number and the chainsaw. The trial began in May of 1988, but was moved elsewhere to escape publicity. Crafts was then sentenced to 50 years in prison for the murder, but he only served 20 years and was let out for good behavior. In January 2020, Richard Crafts was released from prison.